We've made great progress. I was very impressed with how the businesses went about focusing their strategy. They came back with these gates, as I said, is it own IP? Is it differential? Is it digital so we can, scale it? And does it use big data so that we can, provide those insights to the customers? Through that gate came about 50 legal entities, so we've bucketed them into 8 processes, some of them very advanced because we started this obviously soon after, or it already started when I spoke to you last time. Some of them a bit earlier because it's taken a bit of time, but these are good businesses, most of them profitable, but I can't invest in them because they're just at the bottom of my priority list. So we made a decision as management. The best thing for the investors and for the employees was to find them the right homes so that people can invest in them and scale them, and that will really allow us to focus properly on our strategy.
You also identified 6 other key business areas or strategies. One of them was the clarity on the strategy. How far is that?
We're very clear on where we need to go. Obviously in the ICT business it's a little bit more complicated. That's the historical business. It's been around for 20 years. Brilliant business, the big cash cow, and actually focusing that's going to take a little bit longer. This is why we got Rothschilds in who did the unbundling for Old Mutual, and they can bring some of those learnings. Nextech now a focused IP incubator, I think is very exciting. It's what we've done well for years, and then taking these 5 mature IP businesses out and letting them have their own strategy, their own capital structure, their own partnerships if they needed to scale, I think is going to be massively beneficial for them because they're the businesses with the big margins and that are growing at the moment.
So is this part of the business diversification? You're selling, but you're also diversifying.
Yeah, well, it's 2 things. One is it's focusing the strategy so that I'm not spending management time and scarce capital on things that I don't think I'm the best owner at, because if I'm not the best owner, I'm not going to win. And then focusing on the businesses that we think we can win with, and we will win with, and we are winning with, but also separating them out because they are different businesses and they need to grow at different speeds, and they need different capital structures, different partners. Putting them all in one pot means it's always lowest common denominator, and that doesn't work.
Tell us a bit about the business margins. You said that's a bit of a challenge for you going forward.
Yeah, so the ICT business still healthy. It's in around the 9% margin. I think it can be better than that. But at the moment, South Africa is a largely South African business, which with the South African economy under pressure has, pushed those margins down. Some of it was just due to revenue mix. We did some big equipment sales, which we don't usually do, but those are easy pieces of business to do, not very cash intensive, and so it's an easy margin to take, but they do affect the business. And then the Nextech business, which is big, more public sector business, we've seen there, even though we've got contracts, some of that business slowing down because there just isn't cash in the public sector to execute on some of them. So we need to revector that and get it back to normal.
You have almost R1 billion in cash. What's the plan for the cash going forward?
There's lots of things we have to do for it. With it, I mean, obviously we're repaying some of our debt. We need to invest in some of our IP businesses. We still have to pay back some of our acquisitions. Fortunately, we haven't made any in the last year, so those payments will, finish in about 12 months' time, and then that cash will then flow back in the business and be used to invest in scaling these individual businesses.
Net debt is quite high in the business, and I heard your CFO Megan saying that she wants it to be between 1 and 1.5 times in the next 2 to 3 years. How far are you from that number?
Yeah, so this is why this R1 billion of sales is so important, because if we get that right, you then end up with if all that money just went to pay down debt, you end up with the right net debt. And so this collecting debtors, getting efficiencies around tax, getting efficiencies around procurement, getting efficiencies around property, all of that will then go back into the business, and very quickly you end up in a good, flexible net debt position, which is what we need for if we want to be the consolidator of IT going forward.
The last time we spoke, you said you weren't so worried about share price volatility. It has been very volatile, I would say, in the last year. When do you expect it to stop being so volatile?
Our real problem is that we don't have a broad enough spectrum or spread of investors. It's really dominated by 5 or 6 main investors, and they don't trade. They see the value in the business, they've stayed in. So we get a very small portion of our free float trading. And if you have a look, normally we're trading maybe 500,000 shares a day, which is about 0.5%, maybe 0.6% of our shares in issue. Very small liquidity. So anyone who comes in and comes out makes a difference. If you remember when I joined, when my joining was announced, the share price went up 30%. That wasn't because of me. That was just the fact that there were some shorts in the market and people wanted to get out and there's no liquidity, and that booms the price. So it's something we're going to have to live with. But I think when we start delivering on our strategy, we'll make sure we go and look for new investors, both globally, Europe, US and South Africa, and then you'll get a much more stable share price going forward.
Other than investors, let's talk about your international business. You have a bit of an impairment from your business in Zimbabwe. What are the plans for Middle East and the rest of Africa?
Really what we're splitting Middle East and Africa into 2 parts. If you remember, we talked about in South Africa closing down our big ERP implementation business. Africa and Middle East is split in between real ICT product and centers of excellence versus this ERP implementation, and we are busy divesting of all the ERP implementation businesses and obviously scaling and integrating the centers of excellence and products and lines of business. And so it's just a process, but we'll do it in an orderly manner so we can focus on the things we can make a big difference on.
And the Zimbabwe business, won't you just comment what happened there?
It's just about Zimbabwe. The business is actually fine. The problem is that you can't get money out of Zimbabwe. So, we've invested a lot of money into Zimbabwe, and nothing's coming out. I can't borrow money in South Africa, invest in Zimbabwe, and not get a dividend out to pay the debt down. It's just a simple, sensible business plan. And that's the issue with Zimbabwe. So we can't invest in it anymore until we know we can get cash out.
I know we've spoken about it before and we shouldn't, but just a quick comment on the ongoing process with ENS and Microsoft and the May 31 date.
Yeah, so, following that Microsoft letter I got and also the whistleblower that came out, we've managed to do a lot of work. Unfortunately, it hasn't been with Microsoft because they didn't want to work with us. But we've done our own investigations. We've got a lot of information out. And there's 1 or 2 other contracts that we're actually working with third parties on, getting information together. And we'll come to the market like KPMG did, and everyone be totally transparent about what we found, or what the process was, what we found, what we've done about it, and what the process is going forward. We have committed to concluding that initial process by the 31st of May, and as soon as I can get the report out after that, we'll get it out.
And lastly, your outlook for the next 2 years.
Listen, the next 2 years are going to be difficult. The economy in South Africa is not great, and so given we're so systemic in most of large corporate and the public sector, we very much will track whatever the South African economy tracks. But we have some efficiencies that we can pull into the business. Clearly, I've got some additional costs of restructuring that will temper that for a while. But my experience of these processes, they take about 2 years before you really see the grassroots. So we'll carry on in the same vein as you saw today, probably for the next 18 months or so, and then you'll start seeing an improvement if we manage to execute properly.